Hello everyone, and welcome to this quick demo of Terraform. Terraform is a software tool which is developed by HashiCorp. It is definitely an amazing tool, and I'm sure you would fall in love with it once you get to know its capabilities. So the main purpose of this demo is so that you can get a feel of what Terraform is, how it works, and how you can get started with this. If you want to follow along with me, the main prerequisite would be first creating AWS CLI account. You have to create an account which has programmatic access so that we can interact with Amazon Cloud. Then you must have Terraform installed on your system. And at last, I'm going to use Visual Studio. This is for coding purpose. This is an optional feature, but I personally love the interface of Visual Studio. That's why I'm using it. You can even write the codes and notepads. That's totally fine. So before we get started with Terraform demo, let's try to understand the Terraform flow. How do we write the code? So the first step is defining your Terraform configuration file. This is where we completely define what are the components that we plan to deploy. Maybe we plan to deploy instances in our AWS cloud, maybe in Google Cloud or any other cloud, or maybe a third-party vendor we are trying to interact with. So all these components we define in our configuration file. This is with tf extension .tf. Next is what we define the plugins. We initialize the configuration file. The main purpose of this initialization is to download the plugins using which Terraform will be interacting with various infrastructure, whether it is AWS, whether it is Google, whether it is Azure or any other cloud infrastructure. So using this initialization process, we download these plugins which Terraform will be using. And after this, we plan the environment. The planning phase basically lets us get an overview of what is the complete infrastructure that we are trying to build. How many components are there before even actually deploying it. And after this, we go with actual building process, implementing what we have decided so far. How many instances that we want, how many subnets that we want, how many VPCs that we want. All this that we have decided in our planning phase is going to be implemented in your apply phase. And then at last, we are going to destroy this environment. So let's now get started with the demo. This is the interface of my Visual Studio where I'm going to write the codes. So let's first check if Terraform is installed or not. So when you are interacting with Terraform, always the first command would be Terraform and then some components. So in order to check the version, I'll be using Terraform space -v. This will show you the current version of Terraform. So version 0.12 is now the latest, and at present 0.13 is even in beta version available for testing. So now let's get started. In order to write the code, let me first make a specific directory where I'm going to save all my code files. So let's make a directory using mkdir. I give this a name as Terraform. Let me go inside this directory. Now at present, if you see, there are no files available. Now let me create a new file. And this code that we are going to write, basically in Terraform code, we are going to define the various components of our infrastructure. So let's say, for example, I want to define or create a VPC in my Amazon environment. So for that, Terraform has provided various blocks, which is called as resources. So you want to define the various components within your cloud infrastructure. So we'll be using a keyword called as resource. And then what is it that we are trying to do? Which component are we trying to interact with? For example, AWS VPC. So for that, the keyword is AWS underscore VPC. So make sure you write the specific components in double quotes. And then what is the name of the specific component that when you are trying to create, we definitely have to give it a name. So what is the name that you are trying to give? That also I'll be mentioning in double quotes. Let's say I give this a name as my VPC. And with respect to this, whatever the values that we are going to create here, okay, before we proceed, let me show you in Amazon. If I go to this interface, when I'm trying to create a VPC here, it is asking me for, let it just load, give me a moment. It is asking me for a name and a CIDR block value which needs to be entered. And after this, I can click on create. So similarly on Terraform, when I'm defining the value of this specific resource component, which is AWS underscore VPC, I'm going to define the values in my brackets. So what is the component that I'm going to define? I have already defined the name, which is my underscore VPC. And then it is our CIDR block. So CIDR underscore block equal to, then the value which I'm going to give for CIDR block should be also provided in double quotes. So this is the value that I'm going to provide. Just with this specific code, I can interact and let Terraform create this component for me in my AWS cloud. So let's see, I've created this component. Let me save this file. Save as, let me save it in Terraform folder. And make sure when you save this file, you give extension as TF and then save it in double quotes, because by default, it will be saving this file in text, which would not be detected by your Terraform module. So make sure whatever name that you are giving, give it with TF extension and then save it with your double quotes. Then let me just save this. So now my Terraform code file is saved. Let me have a look here. If I do dir, I can see Terraform.tf file is present. The next phase is initialization. So let's say if I plan to skip the initialization process, which is downloading the plugins. Maybe I would directly want to go and plan it. So in order to plan, again, we would use the command as Terraform space plan and then give enter. Now, when you try this, it will give you an error. Let's see, saying could not satisfy the plugin requirements. Plugin initialization is required. So these plugins are the external binaries which Terraform would be using to interact with your different resources. That's why init or initialization is an important process. So how do I perform an initialization? Again, the command for initialization would be Terraform init and then give enter. You'll see it has started downloading the plugins from HashiCorp, and now initialization is completed. After the initialization is completed, if I see my directory, you will see there is a new folder which got created, Terraform. So if now I would go inside this Terraform directory, I can see a folder, plugins. If I go inside plugin, I can see the plugin file which is present, which lets Terraform interact with the remote cloud component. So now let's come back to our main folder. And now we have done the initialization part. The next part or the step would be planning, which would show me what are the various components that I'm trying to deploy before actually deploying it. So for that, I'm going to use the command as Terraform plan. So whenever I would run Terraform plan, it would ask me where is the reason, which reason I want to deploy the component. The reason being, I have not defined the region part in my code. So whenever you don't define the region part in your code and try to plan things, it would ask you where you want to deploy this component. So let's say, for example, I'm choosing it as US East 1. And now it would say that what will be the result. So based on this code that you have written, Terraform is going to create a VPC, and this VPC will be given this CIDR block, and other details with respect to this VPC will be available only when we actually implement this. So let's see, in order to actually implement this code, I would use the command as Terraform apply. Again, when I'm planning to apply or implement this, it would ask me the region because I have not defined that specific component in my code. So let me again, for now, choose it as US East 1. And this would show me what is the action which is going to be performed. And at the end, it will ask me whether do you want to perform this action. So you have to mention yes. It has started creating the VPC. And the result is complete. Resources, one resource is added to my configuration. Now, if I see the current directory of my folder where I had written the code, you can see there is a new file which is generated, terraform.tfstate. You know, the tool is so powerful that it not only helps you create the resource, it also remembers the state of the resource. So let's say if I try to open up this file, let me just show you this file, terraform.state, tfstate. If I open this file, it is going to show me the specific component which is created. So AWS VPC, the name is my VPC, and this is managed. And if I go back on my AWS console and check, I can see there is a VPC which got created with the CIDR value that I have mentioned. So not only this, in this file, you can see that Terraform is remembering the state of the infrastructure which it has built. So now let's see if I again go back to my Visual Studio, and from here I would try to destroy or remove all the components that I have created. So I would use the command as Terraform destroy. sorry, it's Terraform. And again, it would ask you the reason because we have not defined the region in my configuration file. And this before even deleting, it will show me that by running this command, this specific component will get deleted. These are the details of this component. The resource is your VPC resource, which is going to get deleted. Do you want to confirm? So let's say, yes, I want to confirm. And then my destruction is complete just in 2 seconds. I have completely destroyed the environment which I built. Now at this point of time, if I would see my directory, you can see the same file. Let me reopen the file. This time you can see at present it has no output. So this file basically has the content of state of your environment, which was built up by Terraform. But you know what? You must be wondering, in this specific code, I have not defined what is the credential. So how Terraform is able to log in to my AWS console and is able to create this resource for me. So the Terraform tool is so intelligent that it tries to detect if you already have AWS console installed on your system and you have already defined your credentials. So in order to log into your AWS console, we usually will be using the command as AWS configure. And this is where we define our access keys and the secret keys. Whenever you define these components, this is like the username and the password for the command line console to log into and interact with your AWS. So whenever you have defined these components, there is a specific file which gets generated, which is in your AWS folder. Inside your profile, you can see a folder as AWS, and within which you will see a file for credentials. So the Terraform can automatically detect the contents of this and will be able to interact with AWS without even providing the credentials in your code. So for now, we are not going to provide the credentials in our code. Even then, it works fine. Let's try changing the credentials which AWS is using. So I would go to AWS configure, and in here, I'm giving some random credentials, which is not correct. Let the default region name be as it is. And after this, after changing these credentials, so the moment I change these credentials, my credential file also will get updated. And so now from Terraform, if I am trying to interact with AWS with the same method, so let's say the first step is Terraform plan. It will ask me the region. So US East 1. And this time you see we are getting an error saying credentials to account invalid client token ID. And we are getting the response as 403, which represents it is forbidden. So that's the power of Terraform. And that's how you can start interacting with various cloud components. I hope this has been informative to you. We will come back with further more videos on Terraform and its benefits. Thank you for watching.